Anything from yesterday that you were wondering about, or an additional comment or anything? All good?
Not on my end, yeah.
Right. Hope you're not too tired, Suman.
Just a little bit.
A little bit.
I have to say, Stephen, as I was making my cup of coffee, I was so impressed. I was thinking about you, thinking the second night now.
Yeah.
Thank you. I missed last week's for my time, so I'm gonna push through.
Yeah, good
well,
on
yeah,
you.
yeah, exactly.
Good on you. Okay, so we will just start. We won't wait too long. I hope they find their way to the Zoom call soon. The other two, so let's start sharing the screen. And I'm also
Maya, I will say one thing. I think yesterday I was just experiencing a little bit. It was so nice to be in a class with, 3 other women that were, of different cultures and just like from either Pakistan or just India or just I just wanted to say I really enjoyed that.
great.
I'm enjoying it this week.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's, of course, that's the wonderful thing on Zoom, but of course you are in such a different time zone that your time is not matching quite a lot of the rest of the world. Just, but if you would get up once a month, 3 times every night for that, then you can continue to stay for module 5 here if you wanted to. Yeah?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Okay, so here we go. Today, we are talking about trauma, birth energies, and the movement towards the mother. Today is all about the birth and the process of birth and what birth means to us. And it is utmost important for our work because there are lots of traumas that are already in the womb of the mother or at birth that we will be confronted in our work with, and that we might be confronted as well for ourselves. So it's very common that the first traumas are happening to a child in the womb of the mother or at birth. So we do need to address that, of course, thoroughly here, and inquire what we do and how that looks like and what we do to help people. So today we are looking at how to release trauma. We are looking in birth energies, what it is and how to deal with them. We are looking at the whole process of birth, a concept that I have from Malcolm Southwood, that I have made a little animation from to make it more palatable for you guys. We are talking about rebirthing. And finally, we are talking in depth about the interrupted movement towards the mother in a family constellation. So let's jump into trauma release. The most common traumas are childhood trauma, right? And as we said last time, a trauma is severe when there is this emotion of guilt or shame attached to, and that happens mostly in children. Because adults can reason and often, not always, but often can reason about something that has happened and do not adopt necessarily the emotion of guilt or shame. However, children always do that because they are highly susceptible for information that are coming unfiltered to them, into their mind, into their consciousness, and they always think there's somebody coming. Hang on, where is this? Oh no, I can't find it. Here. Just a sec. And here's Navjyoti. So I lost my thread of thought, but anyhow, so it is common for the children that they adopt the feeling of guilt and shame, or shame because they either are ashamed that they are causing suffering towards their parents or anybody else close to them, or they feel guilty that they have caused their own suffering, right? Or somebody else's suffering. So that is a very common emotion. And as you know from yesterday, it is vibrating so low that it's unbearable to live with it. So the subconscious likes to hide these traumas that have emotional traumas that are attached to these emotions deep in the subconscious mind to never come up again. Remember, the subconscious mind is not concerned with happiness, only with survival. And it does not want you to feel this pain that you have felt as a child ever again, because it thinks that that is life-threatening. Yeah. We also have family trauma, and that's, of course, we see that in our work all the time. We call a family trauma a trauma that has happened to a family member who's part of the family system all the way down 7 generations. And that is then not only hidden in the subconscious mind of the person who has suffered the trauma, which might be a child, but it can be an adult as well, but it is more importantly also hidden in the morphogenetic field, in the knowing field of the family. And there we need to access it through our method of family constellation. So how do we access then the childhood trauma when we don't use family constellation, because we are not working with the morphogenetic field here. That's what I will show you. We are working with regressions into childhood. And I will teach you the method that I have taught by Malcolm Southwood, that I have applied since, I don't know, 15 years or when it was. And it is easy, it is efficient, it is safe, it doesn't re-traumatize anybody. And you can learn it and you can follow it and you can apply it in your work. I know there are many, many, many other ways to do it. Of course, I only teach you one, so not to be too confused, and I only use this method anyhow. So the subconscious mind is highly important when we talk about childhood trauma, so we need to understand everything around it. We need to understand trauma and guilt and how this all goes together to form that. So an emotional trauma occurs when one's ability to walk away from a situation is taken away through physical or psychological force. That means the freedom to make choices, yeah? And the emotion of guilt or shame is present. That's what we call an emotional trauma. And the child can never defend themselves. They always they cannot go away. They cannot. Often, of course, these traumas are in the closest family, right? They happen from the parents, not necessarily deliberately. It can be also involuntarily, like in interrupted movement towards the mother. That is possible, but however, the child is always depending on the caretaker who is part of the trauma or who's traumatizing the child, and therefore always finds itself in this situation that it cannot walk away or choose to be anywhere else or choose anything else. Emotional trauma happens in childhood when the child cannot walk away from the situation. This is especially a child in the womb of the mother, a young baby that is immobile, but also toddler, every child that is kind of probably, we always say up to 7 years max, right? That's where we find childhood early. That's where we find the so-called childhood trauma. They are in alpha state or in theta state and exposed to suggestions. That is where this feeling of guilt or shame comes in. And they cannot remember the event, neither as a child nor as an adult, because it's hidden in the subconscious mind. This, these, these three, what can I say? These three points are forming an emotional trauma in childhood, the way we look at it. The family trauma comes from an entangled person through one of the three dynamics in family constellation, which there is. Now let's make a little quiz. What are the three dynamics in family constellation? Heba, your mic doesn't seem to be connected. Have a look.
Hello?
Yep, that's it.
Is it working now?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me too?
Me rather than you, and following someone in death.
Yeah.
And I think guilt or atoning for sins.
Very good, Heba. Well done. Very good. So these are the three dynamics in family constellation who are forming an entanglement. And this one has experienced an act of violence or emotional trauma. Right? So it is passed down through epigenetic inheritance. It is an unacknowledged disorder in the family system that is not balanced, often leads to a family secret. Right? And
excuse me, for some reason, I think I cannot hear you, so I'll just log out and come back in. I think maybe there's something wrong with my connection.
Okay. No problem. It is always the fear of dying, either in de facto or perceived. Of course, we are working with these traumas in childhood. They are perceived because the child is an adult and hasn't died. But when we are talking about family traumas, then we are talking about this this threat that has led to death. Yeah. So that's the difference between a family trauma and a childhood trauma. For the subconscious mind, however, that doesn't make a difference. But we know when we're looking at a family trauma, it has led to a severe disadvantage or death of a person. And we are looking at a current childhood trauma, we know this has not led to the death of this child, but to a perceived dying, which is embedded in the subconscious mind. This trauma leaves a deep wound in the soul, and it is passed on to the next generation through epigenetic inheritance, because the epigenetic is damaged by an emotional trauma. That is, a few years ago, I think about 10 now, has been conducted some scientific experiments finally to find out that this is the case. Right? What we know all along, Bert Helling has proven that already in the 1980s that is the case. 30 years before the scientists found that out for themselves. We need to heal this family trauma in order to go ahead in life. We talked about why healing last time, so just remember what we said there. This is why we want to heal ourselves and want to help to heal others. The common trauma is an interrupted movement towards the mother in the family, not necessarily your current generation, but definitely one generation before that. And often, most likely, it is passed down from the mother to the child. If it's a girl, then also from the child to her child. It can also go down the father's line. It can also be transmitted by boys. So that's not a difference there. Remember, the emotion that you see in a family trauma is not guilt or shame. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the representative says, I don't know, I feel so ashamed. That can happen, but most often they feel another emotion like fear or anger or grief or sadness. That's the most common one. Sudden happenings which cause trauma can be released immediately, and we do that all the time. We are startled. It's always a mini trauma when you get startled, or anything else, or you are shocked by somebody unexpectedly yelling at you, or you almost stepped under a bus or something like that. We are normally releasing these traumas immediately. Yeah, we cry, we shake, we breathe heavily. This is all means of the body to release this energy of trauma, and we do that instinctively, like ducks do when they have a fight. Then they just shake their feathers and then they move on. Or dogs are shivering really, 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 really fast, and this is how they release any kind of trauma. So this is not our concern, and this is not what comes up in a family constellation. Yeah. However, if the emotion of guilt or shame is added to the shock or fear, then it becomes a problem. The emotion of guilt blocks literally the release of shock and fear, and therefore the trauma is held in the subconscious mind to be released later, for example, as a phobia or an allergy. This is how the subconscious mind is communicating. It's always distorting facts. Yeah. We know guilt and shame are the lowest vibrations, and therefore they are hiding for survival and appears grief, fear, desire, or anger. Yes, Saida.
Do you think that part of the reason why there's so many phobias and allergies now is because of the amount of trauma that's just been kind of held within humanity?
That's an interesting thought. I can see that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It is, of course, environmental toxins, right? That you either digest through your diet, or that you breathe in through the air, or that you take in with your water, are of course factors as well. But in my opinion, they are all just accelerators. They are never the reason for these things. The reason is emotional. Yeah. So let's say 150 years ago, before the industrialization, where the air was clean and the water was clean, and people were eating plants that they grew in their garden organically. I would say that is like this healthy upbringing is making the body stronger and also emotional stronger to withstand maybe the some other impacts that can cause emotional traumas. And definitely what I also think is that because there were small communities, everybody knew each other. I don't know exactly, I have no remembrance how it was 150 years ago, but I can just picture that you feel more safe in this environment and not confused with all this information and what's going on nowadays, especially in our children. Families were together multiple generations. They were not divorcing more than 50%, and yeah, I can see that. I can see that this is playing together. Yeah, hand in hand with the increase of allergies and phobias. Yeah, but of course, that's just an opinion or a thought, if you will. The feeling of guilt is when there is a perceived wrongdoing, right? And this perceived wrongdoing is the disobeying of the orders of love and life. And when you remember what we said in module 1 about the conscience and the person and the family conscience that we are growing up with, then we know that guilt is not objectively detectable. Guilt is highly subjective. It's a feeling that you adopt when you think you are disobeying the family conscience, and that's what is then causing, together with a shock, with an emotional shock, a trauma, the fear for life, if you will. That is then what is causing the trauma. It is observed as unable to look at or go to others which has been wronged, right? So when we feel guilty, we see that in family constellation, normally the representative who feels the guilt cannot look at the source of the guilt. They have to look away. That's a sign for guilt. Yeah? Or they look down. But most often they look away. Looking down is more shame than guilt. So that's more the gesture that you see. Therefore, other family members, descendants, are taking over the role. Yeah, to feel the guilt, to look at the victim. They do that. What the one who is traumatized and feels guilty should do to heal and can't because of the feeling of guilt. The entangled person has the same symptoms often as if it would be their own childhood trauma. This is why we always need to dig deeper. When we think we look at somebody who has a childhood trauma, which is correct, they would probably have one, then we always have to rethink, is this just a repetition of a family pattern? Has somebody else a childhood trauma in this family? Yeah. Is he entangled? Is he or she entangled with this person? Is this a repeated family pattern? That's what we always need to reassure ourselves. So let's talk about the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind has three functions. The first function is concerned with growth, maintenance, and repair of the body. We don't need to think about breathing. We don't need to think about healing a wound on our skin. The subconscious mind is organizing all of this. We don't need to think about that and organize it, right? We don't need to tell ourselves what to do. That's all taken care of without us taking any attention, so we can do other things. The second function of the subconscious mind is to create a body memory out of repetitive behavior. Again, to free resources for the conscious mind to look after day-to-day things that are new, that needs the attention. Repetitive behavior is anything. You just think of driving to work in your car, always the same way. After a few years, you barely remember from the time you got into the car by the time you are at your desk, how you even got there. Yeah. So you didn't really think about where you turn right, where you turn left, where you stop. It's all going on auto mode. And that is what the subconscious mind does. And of course, body memory is very important for athletes, right? The body needs to be used to the movements that they want to perfectionize. They cannot think about every movement, then they have no time, that they will be not fast enough if they would think about it. So body memory is important, and that is all dealt with by the subconscious mind. And the third function is what we are concerned with, that is avoiding pain. The subconscious mind's function is to avoid physical and emotional pain. And how does it do that? It hides it. It doesn't want us to remember the incident at all. Because it thinks when we remember it, we think of it, we feel the pain again. And that's a bad job for the subconscious mind, because it is there to avoid pain. Yeah. And that goes for physical pain as well as for emotional pain. For the subconscious mind, there is no distinction between those two. And you know that when you have, let's say you broke your ankle once, yeah, and now, even though the ankle is healing, your body has a line, so you don't put in a lot of weight onto your right foot. Just the subconscious mind just is taking over and wants you to avoid pain by putting your right foot down. No, so it shifts the weight on the left foot. What happens then? Your hip maybe gets out of whack, or your other muscles taking over more work in your body, and this goes out of alignment, right? And you end up after 2 years with an osteopath who finds then that whatever your hip or your sternum or whatnot has shifted, and you have no reassembling when and why that has happened, but they can actually track that down if they are good at their job to this incident years ago when you broke your ankle. So that is what the body does: avoiding physical pain as much as emotional pain. So a memory to something that has happened that was painful emotionally is then hidden in the subconscious mind when it is attached to the feeling of guilt and shame, because guilt and shame are vibrating so low that the subconscious mind thinks it cannot, and it's probably right, it cannot perform its function for survival, because these are emotions that you cannot really live with. Yeah, you cannot live in a constant state of expressed guilt or shame. And the subconscious mind knows that. When we are looking at trauma, we have to understand the difference between trauma and trigger. The trigger is what the subconscious mind reminds it of the incident, and then it reacts with something that is there perceived by the subconscious mind to avoid pain. So let's say there was a car accident. Let's say you were driving, there was a car accident, a child has been hit and died, and you were shocked, of course, shocked, and you were guilty because it was what you forgot your glasses at home, or you drank something, or whatever it was. Yeah, so you felt really guilty about it, and so the subconscious mind tries to hide this incident and numbs it down. And now, for example, and you don't ever drive a car anymore, and you don't want, you can't, you don't want to be remembered of it. And now your son is 18 years old and is driving a car, and now this is a trigger for the trauma, right? So now this father, let's say it's a father, this father becomes diseased, let's say an illness, Parkinson, yeah, all of a sudden, shaking all the time, something like that. Then this, if an incident that the son became 18 years and drives the car is triggering the subconscious mind, but instead of releasing this hidden event when he was 18 and he hit somebody with his car, instead of bringing that into the forefront, and so it can be looked at and healed, it still hides that and overlays it with another problem, yeah, which would be in this case Parkinson or something like that. So that is the strategy of the subconscious mind to avoid pain and to secure the survival, right? And this is why it makes it so hard to work with, because it never reveals the truth. And when we go in regressions where we are working with the subconscious mind, I will remind you, or I will demonstrate to you that we will not fall for what so-called false memories. Excuse me. False memories is what the subconscious mind comes with to divert the attention of the conscious mind of the real incident, of the real trauma. We only remember this. It's a mantra. We only see the trigger, not the trauma. We never see the trauma. We see the trigger. But from there, we can go back and find the trauma. And that's where our work comes in. Your subconscious mind is concerned with your survival, not your happiness. The other trauma, the other mantra. It is always like this. It does not care about your happiness. even if it would know that if you would be able to look at the trauma and the guilt, and then that so you can release it with some techniques that you know work and that would help, it would not release it just because you wanted to. It has literally a mind on its own. So, for example, a panic attack, a phobia, is an attempt from the subconscious mind to release these emotions. Yeah? It doesn't want to look at the trauma, it wants to release the emotion because it's painful, but it uses means that are not helpful because it just creates another problem, which would be in this case, in this example, a panic attack. It takes an enormous energy to suppress emotions of fear or guilt because it's so low frequency. Yeah, people suffering a trauma will have less energy and are emotionally weak and fall ill often. These are signs of a trauma. They have not much energy, they feel emotionally weak, and they fall ill often because they're also physically weak, because their energy is consumed by suppressing the trauma. You only experience the trigger, not the trauma. The work is to go back and find where the trauma is originated, meaning find the guilt, find the shame, and release it there with a regression or a family constellation, or both combined. So in specific, childhood traumas are released through regression, not with the child, with the adult who is suffering an unknown childhood trauma. That's what I mean, of course. And the family trauma is released in family constellation. Okay, any questions to the trauma? All good? Okay. Let's look at birth energies and rebirthing. What is a birth, by the way? The birth is a change from the non-physical reality into the physical reality. That's the definition of a birth. And you might know the saying, it's a matter of life and death. Yeah, it's in German, it's a saying. I think it's in England too, in English too. And I actually made a blog post and a podcast about it if you want to read it or listen to it. Because it's a misconception. Death is not the opposite of life. The opposite of death is birth. Life is continuing, right? So now we should look at birth. It's a change from the non-physical reality into the physical reality. We will also look at the heart. When we look at it, it has a very important role, the physical heart, not only for the body, but also on a spiritual level. Then we will also talk about birth energies. We will look in exactly, once we know how this, how birth is taken place on all planes of all levels, on 3 levels, on spiritual, emotional, and physical level. Then we can also look at the birth energies on a physical level. I have a little animation for you, so I will show you how a human is being created. And then after we have understood the complete picture of what birthing means, then we also know what, when we need a rebirthing, when a client needs a rebirthing, and I will teach you how to do that as well. And finally, of course, the interrupted movement will be on our plate today. Birth energies are energies that are very specific to the event of a birth. The birth energies are not in men, they are in women, and they are created by or transformed, because energies cannot be created, but other energies are transforming into birth energies in the moment the birth starts. And the birth starts when the water breaks, when the first contractions come, and when the cervix starts to open. That's the start of a birth. not when a doctor decides it's time now to get the baby out. Yeah, that is due to when the baby and the mother are ready to give birth. So, of course, Saida, you have how many children?
2.
You have 2 children, yeah? How did you experience the birth, the beginning of the birth?
So both were late. I was induced for both of them.
Ah,
Yeah.
how late?
First one was 10 days,
Hmm.
and the second one was 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But interestingly, my son, that the whole process was 3 days.
Oh
He
my
didn't
God.
want to come out. Yeah.
Well, you will see in a few minutes what that means. And Navjoti, you have also 2 children, right? How did you experience the birth? I think you need to put your mic. You're not muted, but you don't have your mic on. No, we can't hear you. No, you're not muted. It's the mic is not on your computer.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I was saying, unfortunately, I had to have C-sections for both. I did not even have a chance to go into labor.
Oh, what was that? Why was that?
Well, for the first one, they said that your amniotic fluid is low.
Mm-hmm.
And for the second one, they said because you've had a first C-section, you'll need a second C-section.
Well, that
And the
is
first
very
one,
common, of course. Yeah. Of course, that's very common nowadays, and we will talk about that.
yeah.
We will talk about that, what that means for the mother and the baby, right? So the birth energies that are specifically transformed out of other energies for this event are in both alike mother and baby created. Yeah, the birth energies in a normal birth are different to the ones in a fast, interrupted, or forced birth. And that is also different to the slower traumatic birth or late birth. Yeah. And then we have to talk about cesarean sections. That is very special in regards of the birth energy. And we will finally also talk about postpartum depression. So let me introduce you the process of a normal birth. It takes 6 to 8 hours. Sahida's looking in. 6 to 8 hours is a normal birth. I can tell for my only son that it takes him exactly 6.5 hours to come. It releases a huge amount of instinctive birth energies in both mother and baby, and these instinctive birth energies are specific to this event. They cannot be created before it, and they cannot be created after that. The baby needs to go through the birthing channel to stabilize the spirit in the body. I will show you that on my little chart, on my animation. And the baby needs to use up all the birth energies by struggling to move out of the womb, and mother uses her powers to push the baby out. That is a normal birth. It's very, very it's an enormous act of you need a lot of power to do that, and you got the power because of the birth energies. And your baby, who has done nothing than swimming blissfully in a warm liquid, being looked after and cared for, all of a sudden becomes this strong engine, yeah, that is pushing and pressing and struggling to get through. This is coming out of nowhere, right? This is like a waking up, and that is what the birth energies do. Without them, it is not possible to let go from this bond that the children and mother have for 9 months, because also it's an emotional bond, and something needs to happen that makes the mother aware, I want to get rid of this baby, and the baby, I want to get out of my heavenly warm womb. Yeah, something is happening there, and that is what the birth energies are doing. The baby has to stay uninterrupted with the mother until the colostrum has been delivered. That is part of the birth. The birth is not finished until the colostrum has been delivered. And there is this, I don't know how it is now.
I think you mean the placenta, maybe?
Colostrum.
What
You
do
know
you
the
mean by the
milk?
colostrum?
The milk, the first milk?
Ah, okay, the yellow milk.
Yeah.
Okay, but this, I think it stays until 1 week after the birth or 2 weeks.
Well, I'm not sure about that, Heber. Maybe it does. The baby ideally should be 40 days with the mother anyhow, but we are here talking
Okay.
about the first
First when it comes out.
milk that comes out, the first
Yes.
first
Okay.
drink, if you will, right? So
Well,
that's,
okay.
and of course you're completely right, and of course, and the placenta also needs to be delivered. That's all part of the birth. That's absolutely correct. So that is part of the birth, and before this is not happened, the birth is not completed. Yeah, it would be interrupted. And unfortunately, I don't know whether it's how it is now, but in former days there was a like you took the baby away from the mother, she didn't even see it. It got bathed and weighed and all kinds of things done, and then being brought back to the mother after half an hour. That is, of course, you know it by now, the first big trauma for both mother and child, right? So that's because the birth wasn't completed. The baby needs its so the baby is coming with a protective shield of light, and some people are actually able to see that, and that stays in there for about 40 days. And it is in old times, and I do know that from in Germany from my mother, that was common practice still when my mother was pregnant, is that the mother stays at home for 40 days with the child and was looked after by other women. That was the most common practice because everybody knew, and I'm sure in other cultures is still right. Navjoti is nodding. So in other cultures, this is still state of the art.
The baby becomes a toy for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Everyone
exactly.
holding him, passing him from one person to another.
Yeah, which is not the best thing to do with a baby, right? The baby should be with the mother undisturbed and uninterrupted, and the other people should look after the mother because the mother is looking after the baby. So ideally there's a group of women, relatives and friends who are looking after the mother, cooking for the mother and doing all the things so she can focus on the baby. So that's the ideal world, right? The father can be involved. Nowadays, the father wants to be involved, but it's not the same. There is no birth energies created in the father at all. I mean, even though if some fathers are behaving like they are giving birth to the child, but it is not, obviously, right? The father also from a spiritual perspective of the baby does need to be involved until much later in time, much later in their development, right? Now I show you how this concept that I have learned from Malcolm Southwood is coming together with a little animation. So we have the physical body, you know, the home is Earth, right? Coming from minerals and carbon and everything that you find on Earth is the body is created. Then we have the astral body coming from the astral plane. That is also synonymously for the soul, astral body. And then we have the spiritual body or the spirit coming from the world of light. Now we have, this is simplified. I'm sure it's much more complex, but just for the sake of conveying it and understanding it, we are looking at these three bodies, yeah? the higher self consciousness, or the spirit, however you want to call it, yeah, from the world of night, needs to be united with the astral body, which is left behind at the end of the last life, to go home to the light. Yeah, so that's one requirement for birth. The soul needs to learn the planned lesson in the new body, and therefore has to be in line with the karma of mother and father. So it's already getting complicated to find the right mother and father for the soul, right? So it's all well planned in the astral world, you know, and the soul is very much looking forward, kind of directing a man and a woman to find each other, to create it. Or nowadays, a sperm donor maybe, or something like that. So this is not by coincidence. Nothing is coincidental. We are all on Earth because we wanted to be here. We wanted to be with these parents. We wanted to be in this life situation because that is where we learn whatever we wanted to learn, a lesson. And then the physical body needs to be stable and genetically intact, of course. If it wouldn't be genetically intact, the birth wouldn't go, the fetus wouldn't develop. So that's another requirement, to find that in the parents as well, and in the life circumstances they're in. So a really complex, even in this, and this is very simplified, so a very complex process that is planned long before the conception, yeah, of the soul, long before sperm and egg can come together. It's already all mapped out, how it's designed for this soul to experience on their soul journey. Now, let's say everything has been mapped out, everything is ready to go, the women and the men have met, they had sex, and yay, she got pregnant. So the egg was fertilized by the sperm. Now we have week 1, where the cells are diverting, and the start of the physical body. What is magic in this time, the first 12 week, is the magic has happened around week 5 to 6, when the heart is created. The heart is created out of this artery and the other one. How do you call that? The artery and the vein, or how do you call that thing? Yeah, okay. And they are kind of coming together.
The circulation or the circulatory system.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the two tubes. Let's call them tubes. The two tubes are the first physical appearances out of this clump of cells, and they come in week 5 or 6 together and form the actual heart. Imagine that. I'm still blown away. Why? There is no blood to flow. There is nothing that needs the heart. You will know in a few minutes why this is so utmost important. So the heart is forming first, and not only is the heart forming, yeah, as a center of the being, the very first thing that happens, but it also starts to pump at week 5 or 6. There's no blood to pump. There's no organs. There is no nothing. Why is it pumping? Because it creates a strong electromagnetic field. That's the pumping action of the heart. And this electromagnetic field is attracting the soul. Otherwise, the soul wouldn't be able to come and unite with the body, because the soul cannot move. It has no body. Yeah, it needs to be attracted, needs to be drawn into the body, and that's what the heart does. That's the true function of the heart. So this electromagnetic field gets stronger and stronger from week 5 to week 12. And when it is strong enough, then the soul is attracted, and it's combining with the physical body. And I just recently learned, and I forgot the term, an English term. What is it? Kimberly from the other course said something. What is it called? There's actually a word for that. That a word in English that I never heard before. That the woman feels this after week 12. Feels something happening. I don't know. I will.
The glow.
Hey.
The glow.
Yeah, the glow, she had another word, but I think the glow is something that is happening. You see the pregnancy. Normally, any sickness is over, and normally the woman feels great. And also, the pregnancy is more stable and more, I don't know a figure, but 99% stable and less likely to fail. Yeah, so that's when the soul is combining with the body. And yeah, and when you have been pregnant, I'm sure you remember that time. It is normally a very joyful time when this happened, and it's kind of a knowingness that there is actually now another soul there, right? It's kind of, you're connecting with that. I don't know whether you have felt that, Saida or Navjoti. I did, definitely, yeah. So now we are in week 12, 13. Oh no, hang on. Where? Oh yeah. Now we are, the body is developing, and now we are coming to week to the next phase, week 17 to 40. That is when the pregnancy goes ahead, and the spirit is attracted to the body soul conglomerate, if you will, but it is not combining with them yet. It is surrounding it, and it's kind of protecting it, and that is also giving this glow of the mother. The pregnant mother has this glow. That is when the soul, the spirit of the baby is surrounding them both, and also giving some sort of protection there. So the next step then is, and that's the most important part that we are now talking about, is with a normal birth in week 40, yeah, we have this 6 to 8 hours. The birth starts, and the baby goes through the birthing channel. And that is when the spirit comes in. The spirit needs this action that the baby goes physically through the birthing canal to combine with, instead of just surrounding it, to be combined with body and soul. That is very important. If the birth is shorter, longer, or traumatic, mother and child can develop symptoms of unused birth energies, which we will talk about. Let's assume, because we are looking at the normal birth, this has happened. It was a normal birth, 6 to 8 hours, no chemicals involved, no inducing, nothing. The spirit comes in, and then the baby comes out completely intact and is born. So here we are. Here's our baby, happy as, and mother's happy as well. That is a normal birth, right? So now we have our life. The baby lives on from day 1 until death. And as you can see, the soul color has changed from blue to yellow as a symbol that the lesson has been learned, and they have raised their frequency of emotion. This soul has raised the frequency from a lower one, let's say 250 to 350, yeah, through the lessons they learned. So they have another color now. And that means also they go to another plane in the astral world, to another realm of the astral world. So when they die, what happens is the heart stops beating. And now you know why that is the only way that death can take place, because the electromagnetic field is also dying, and now there is nothing to attract the soul and the spirit anymore. And they are drawn to their world. They cannot go there. They cannot decide. They are drawn to it. Yeah. So now the soul is drawn to the yellow astral world and not back to the green ones, because they are attracted to their color. And of course, the spirit is attracted back to the world of light where it came from. And that is called death. And here's a chart that you can later on see on the video. recordings, or you can take a screenshot. There's everything, all the information on there. If you like to print that out and put that in your notebook. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the heart. The heart has so many fascinating facets from a spiritual level that I would like to spend a few more minutes on that, right? So first of all, the heartbeat creates a strong electromagnetic field which holds all the three energy bodies together, so that the soul is attracted back to the astral plane and the spirit to the world of light when the heart isn't creating the strong electromagnetic field anymore. And this is called also the spiritual law of gravity. Soul and spirit, they cannot walk. They cannot fly. You have to understand that. They need to be attracted. But also remember that they are not going in another physical plane. The only physical plane is Earth. So the astral plane and the world of light is also here. It's just on another level of existence. It is not out there, somewhere behind the moon or so, you know? So we have to understand that this depicturing of physicality with what we used to explain things, as soon as you enter the world of the unseen, doesn't count anymore. We have to get used to the idea that we are living, that everything is happening here and now. Everything is happening here now. However, here and now does not even exist, right? Just to make sure that we're on the same page. In a meditation, in deep sleep, and in breathing exercises like pranayama, the heartbeat slows down, and therefore the electromagnetic field becomes weaker. And you can measure all of this, right? You can measure the electromagnetic field of the heart, and you can measure it also the intensity during sleep. And that has been done a lot of time. And it becomes weaker. And what that means is that it's less magnetic to the spirit and the soul. And they use this time to go on a trip home. Yeah. We don't know that, of course, because we are sleeping. We don't have any resemblance of what is happening there. Sometimes some people do, and they call that out-of-body experiences, when they are conscious about it and can memorize that they actually left the body, mainly in the night, but some can also do that deliberately anytime, and that they discover other worlds or go floating around to somewhere else, but they are always connected with a cord that some people can see in these experiences. It's always depicted as a silver cord that is connecting the body, the soul, and the spirit. And because the soul cannot move, the soul needs to be attracted to where they are going. Yeah. So that's not like, oh, I'm leaving the body and now I'm going here and there and look in my neighbor's bedroom or something like that. There need to be a reason for the soul to go somewhere. They need to be attracted by that. That's the spiritual law of gravity. The hands, another fact that I love when I learned about the heart, the hands are a literal extension of the heart. When the limbs are forming in the baby, in the fetus, the hands and the arms are formed from the tissues that is surrounding the heart, the protective layer of the heart. So the hands are a literal extension of the heart. They are directly connected to the heart. And this is also why the energy healing needs just the hands, right? The hands can have such a strong electromagnetic power from the heart that they can, in Reiki and other modalities heal. And Malcolm Southwood was actually mostly known for his energy healing. So he was physically healing people with hands. Yeah. So that's great. The hands are, and that's why we love to hug and shake hands in many cultures. You use your hands to connect, because you connect literally from heart to heart when you do that, when you use your hands. And also the heart chakra is the turning point from an animal nature to a spiritual being. So that's also the importance of the heart, that it is there to channel these lower frequencies of energies from the animal nature, the lower three chakras, and open the door or the gate to the higher three more spiritual chakras. There's a wonderful book that I recommend if you want to know more about the heart on a spiritual level. It's called Living from the Heart. The author is Nirmala, and it's a wonderful book to teach how we can make decisions neither from the head nor from the stomach. Head is mind, stomach is emotion, but where we really should go for and reference to when we make decisions is from the heart. And that's what he is talking about and teaching in this book. Very well, very worth reading. So now we have this normal birth and death process in our chart, and we talked about that. Heba, yeah?
There is, yeah, if someone is interested about this, there is one website, I think it's called Heart Math, where they have been doing also like a lot of studies about that.
Oh,
that
that's
the heart
interesting. Can
Yeah,
you put that in the chat?
I'll try to find it and I'll send it on the WhatsApp group.
That would be fantastic.
Because I was listening to a book on Audible about the same thing, that the heart is the second mind that we have.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's great.
Yeah,
Thank you, Heba. Yeah, put it on the WhatsApp group. Yeah. Great. Okay, so fast and interrupted or forced birth takes less than 5 hours. So it's not 6 to 8, it's less than that, 5 hours. That means that the birth energies have been fully formed because the birth has begun, but they cannot be used up completely because the birth was too fast. The mother and baby are still energetically connected and want to let go of each other to complete the separation. And the birth energy cannot be used up by anything else. You cannot run as an adult or marathons or cry as a baby as much that you use up birth energies, because if the birth is over, the birth is over. The energies are there. They are stuck. They are literally stuck. And on an emotional level, the birth energies that are this energy to let go of each other, yeah, or let go of the bond, is still present. That there is, of course, also from ancient wisdom schools, something that midwives and wise women did all the time in all cultures, is to swaddle the baby. That means to put the baby in tight sheets. That means that the baby has still this feeling of being in the birth canal and tries to struggle, yeah, against the sheets. And this is actually a way that they can use up their excess of birth energies. Wonderful method to do that. Always have been used, but now forgotten, mainly, I would say. The adult can have a rebirthing or regression in the case of a phobia, for example, to release this birth energies. A regression would take him back to the moment of birth. Rebirthing would take them back to the moment of birth, and then they can release their birth energies there. The mother, however, has the same, right? She also has stuck birth energies because the birth was too fast or interrupted. Maybe the birth began and then they decided to induce the mother and take the baby out by a cesarean section or something like that. That's also an interrupted birth, yeah? So the mother, however, can be guided in a regression to the birth when she was giving birth, yeah, and release the birth energies there. Or she can have a rebirthing with her child. That's also possible, yeah. So they can both release all birth energies, especially if we have a representative for both mother and child. The opposite of a fast birth is a slow or traumatic birth. Who did you say, Saida, you had what, 30 hours or 3 days?
3 days. 3 days. Yeah.
3 days. Okay, so that's definitely a slow and therefore traumatic birth, right? So what happens here? That happens that the birth energies have been all used up already, and the birth hasn't been finished yet, right? So once it has exceeded 8 hours, kind of this exhaustion of birth energies is there, and there is not the drive to do this anymore. So there's no wonder that it takes then so long, right? Because it
Sorry,
can't
Maya,
go.
you mean that the energy finishes after 8 hours? So if
Yeah,
by 8 hours they haven't delivered yet, they have no longer any energy, right?
exactly. There's no resources anymore of the birth energy.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So they are spent, if you will. Yeah, they are spent. So these babies or toddlers or children can have poor concentration. They like to spend time alone. Sometimes they don't like water or their head underwater for some reason because they have been too long in the water. They lie too long in the water. They can be impatient or aggressive or feeling frustrated. They can be fearful. Um, they can be angry. That's all signs that they had a slow or traumatic birth. Sometimes they are fast, like they are just people who achieve things fast. They want to be fast. They speak fast. They're always the first one to put their hands on a task. Or they can also be the ones who push others out of the way and become bullies. So they are all signs for a child that has suffered a slow or traumatic birth. Which brings me to the question, Saida. Is there anything of this here that would remind you of your child after 3 days?
Yeah, I would say can be impatient and aggressive, feels frustration, and is angry. And actually, when he was young, he used to want to hit me all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That is exactly the sign of this traumatic birth. Very good. How's about water? Does he like to dive or?
Loves swimming.
Okay.
Absolutely loves swimming.
Very good. So the signs don't need to come all, of course, in play, but there's already a lot in this. What was with your other birth? What was the other birth? That was not slow.
Well, induced as well, but maybe about a day and a half. But
Oh, it was
interestingly,
also. Oh.
yeah. So for her, I think her cord was around her neck, and they didn't realize. So when she was born, she wasn't breathing, and they took her to special care baby unit. So I didn't see her for 5 hours.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and she
yeah.
went with her dad. So yeah.
That would be then when we look at the interrupted movement. That's often the case. That's what is causing an interrupted movement. And what do you think about her symptoms? Does she have any of these, or how would you describe her?
Yeah, she likes spending time alone.
Mm-hmm.
She can be impatient. But I don't think any of the other things apply.
Good, very good. So the adult of this traumatized child is often seen coughing or has a skin disease like psoriasis, sometimes show sign of claustrophobia, and sometimes they also like to self-inflict wounds to themselves. So these are signs once the traumatized child grows up and had no chance to heal any of these traumas of the traumatic birth, then that can happen to them. Sometimes when they become teenagers, right? That's when the adulthood starts, if you will, the transition to the adulthood. Why is that? Because they are desperate to see blood, because that would symbolize the end of the birth, right? They are claustrophobic because they spend so much time in the birth canal that they really think that's not going to end. Yeah, they think they're going to die here. They have skin diseases because it is very dry because the water broke long ago, and it's very painful and very dry. So they rub their skin on the birth canal, right? And that's causing then later symptoms of maybe even as a baby, but maybe definitely later can cause symptoms of skin diseases and coughing. Yeah, why was coughing again? I think the reasoning for that doesn't come to my mind right now. Maybe as a substitute for crying, because they are eager to, you know, have this first breath and this first cry of a baby when they start to breathe outside of the mother, and that's symbolized by the coughing that they adopt then later in their years. So then we have, of course, the early birth. An early birth is before the birth started. Especially planned cesarean sections are early birth, but sometimes it can also be naturally an early birth. When the the typical case when the baby comes out suddenly, unexpectedly in week 36, 37, right, 38 latest, that would be called an early birth. That is before any birth energies have been released. Yeah. But it is not only a matter of time, it can also be when the baby isn't ready to leave the womb. So it can also be in week 39 or even 40, when it's a forced birth, that the baby wasn't ready to come. Then the birth energies wouldn't have formed neither. If the baby wanted to come at week 42, and now it's week 40 and it's induced, then no birth energies have formed. These children are normally quiet and clingy. They have separation anxieties from mother and needs mother's energy. So they feel low energy and they drain literally the energy of the mother. I actually do know from close friends a baby that was born in week 36 that is exactly like this. Right? Couldn't be without either mother or father, not for 1 second. That's a typical sign. They like to pinch, bite, or scratch as children also. And as adults, fun fact, they seem to be always late. So what are we doing? Yes, Saida?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say it's really funny because both me and my husband were born 1 month premature, and we're none of these things. If anything, we're always early.
Oh, really? So you
Yeah,
are always early.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're both very far away from our mothers.
Mm,
Mm,
interesting. That's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Good. Thank you for the feedback. That's interesting. I can't think of why you're always early because you're used to that. You're kind of born
But
early.
maybe if the trauma of the early birth was healed somehow, then they will not show these symptoms,
That's
right?
true. Yeah. Yeah. That's
That could
true.
be a possibility.
Yeah, of course. That's what we are talking about, is completely untouched, the trauma. Thank you, Heber. That's a good point. So what can be done here in this case of an early birth with the children? That's also something that has been done in many cultures for millennia. Yeah, they play the pushing game with the baby. So the child has to hold tight. It's also Irina Prekov. I think she's Russian. She was famous in the 1980s for a therapy that is called, what was the English term in German? It's Festhalte Therapy. It's translated as holding tight therapy. Yeah. And that has not only children, also adults, by holding them really tight for a long period of time, they go it's like a regression. They go back into their birth into the time of their birth, and they try to get out, and that is then the struggle that they would have in the birth if they would have had the birth energies at that time. And that is then created through this holding tight. If you're interested in this kind of work, I don't know how to spell her, but I'm sure you find her, Irina Prekov. therapy or something like that. You can, so with the children, they play this push game. They hold them tight. They encourage them to push with their feet against the belly of the mother and let them really, really push. I'm talking hours, and they repeat that and they repeat that until they have come in the state of the birth and develop birth energies, and then also release them through pushing, through pushing with their legs, struggling out of the arms of the mother. And when they are adults, we can do a rebirthing with the adults. We just go back to the time of birth, and then we would override the information that it was an early birth where no birth energies were formed with the information that we are now going through a normal birth when the baby was ready. And now we talk about the cesarean section. So when the cesarean section is performed after the birth has started, when birth energies were already developed, it's the same as an interrupted birth, as we have just spoken about. If the cesarean section was planned, and they normally plan it way before the birth can start naturally, then it is an early birth, exactly what we have talked about before. Navjoti, that reminds me. How was your cesarean sections? Was this planned? Was this earlier, or emergency, or how did that go?
Can you hear me, Maya?
Yep.
No, it was so as soon as I crossed 37 weeks, they started badgering me. You have to have a C-section. You have to have a C-section. So I pulled it in case of my first child, I pulled it by 1 more week. So at around 38 weeks. But yeah, it had to be planned. They tried to induce me. I did not get induced. Even with, so I knew it was not ready, but they said, no, there's a cord around the neck also. We are not taking a chance. So that was that. With the second baby, at least my water broke. At least something would happen. But then I wasn't allowed to wait once the water broke, and I went into C-section after that. Yeah.
So you didn't have contraction? You never experienced contraction? Yeah.
Never.
Well, you may have a third one. Who knows? You never know. Never say never.
That's nice.
Okay. Have you seen any of the symptoms in your children from the early birth?
Yeah,
let's go back.
The anxiety and clinginess in my older one. The younger one has just turned 1, so he's anyway always with me. But the older one, yes, he is a bit fearful and clingy and insecure about leaving me.
Yeah. And what is the younger one?
Younger one, yeah, he's okay. He's quite jolly, but yeah, even if he has to express affection, he'll whack you or he'll scratch you. So I'm teaching him how to be soft and caressing, but so those 2 things I notice.
Yeah, interesting. So you can do exactly this pushing game with them. You can put them on your lap and hold them so tight that it's uncomfortable for them and they want to get away. And when they want to get away, you just hold them tighter. Yeah. And if you start that, you can't let go, right? You have to wait, and it's quite tiring, but you have to wait until they are exhausted. Start with your younger one. He's probably not that strong. And see how it goes, and let us know. Okay, good. Okay. All right, so it's time for our break. We have 10 minutes for our break, and then we have an exercise. Let me see, what are we doing for the exercise so you can prepare mentally for it. We do a client assessment. You go in groups of 2. One is the client, one is the systemic coach, and you will assess your client and find out if they have birth energies, we're talking about their own birth, not the birth they had with their children, right? So their own birth. Find out what do they know about their birth? What has the mother told about the birth? Normally you get some information from your mother, a few bits here and there, and then you tell each other about the birth that you know of and how you feel about that. And then you decide if your client needs a rebirthing, yeah, or if they might have an interrupted movement towards the mother, yeah, and what are the signs, why you think that, but you do not go there. You are not performing anything. It's just an assessment, a client assessment. Yeah, understood. Okay, but we do that after the break.
But
What do you
Maya,
want to do that before?
I know nothing about my birth, except that it was a natural birth, but I don't know anything other than that.
Well,
No.
when you talk about it, you will see. Something will maybe come up. We are also, working with the subconscious mind a little bit, as always, and you never know in the situation what comes up. And maybe your partner in your group asks some questions that you weirdly can answer. Yeah, this is always possible. Okay. Right. I was just because we are a little bit good in time. Shall we have the exercise maybe now that it's also fresh, or do you feel you need a break before? Better now and have the break after? Yeah, I think so too. Let's do the exercise now. Okay. So I put you in breakout rooms. So we will have 10 minutes, 5 or let's say 8 minutes, 4 minutes each for this interview. Yeah. Yeah. That's not. Is it resume? Yeah. No. Is it resuming? Hang on. Yeah. So, the other group is not ready yet. How was your experience? Want to start? Who wants to start?
Yeah, neither of us knew much, Maya, about our birth, so it's something that remains to be discovered. So we were talking about our own kids.
Okay, very good. So we will learn what we do, and let's put it that way. This is an exercise, obviously, to apply something that you have learned today. However, when you work with a client, you would not just test out if they need a rebirthing. There would be a hint. There would be something that, from what we have discussed, that is pointing towards the necessity of a rebirthing, for example, yeah? And then you would start to inquire more into their birth, and they would know something. Something would come to mind normally that is reassuring you that there needs to be a rebirthing done. So that's totally fine if you don't know anything.
No, there is information about say that then, but I didn't take it forward. Yeah, say that you want to share.
Yeah, share.
Yeah, I mean, I said, and it's very sad, but I said that I thought part of the reason, or I've been told that part of the reason why I was born prematurely was because my dad kind of kicked my mom down the stairs. But that's really all that I know about my birth.
Yeah. But that would be already enough if that would be a client situation to go deeper, no? Because you also have a trauma here in the child that would probably be fearing for its life in the womb of the mother. Yeah. There would also be some words have been said that led through the situation that the father kicked the mother down the stairs, and the baby would have picked on that as well. So there's already a lot in this information that we can work with when this is a client situation, no? And inquire more. But that's totally fine. You don't need to do that enough, totally now. Be comfortable because, this is probably something bigger than it's good for an exercise. Okay, thank you for sharing. And Suman and Heba, did you go somewhere with your inquiry?
Yeah, it turned out that Suman hates water.
Aha! So, tell me about it.
I hate water.
And do you know how anything about your birth? Was it long or was it?
I don't know the length of my birth. I know I was a cesarean baby. I know my parents were hoping that I was going to be a boy.
Mhm.
I know that my mom always tells me, like, you have so much anger because the doctor that delivered you was so angry. And then that's pretty much
That's
it.
interesting.
I know that she blames it on the doctor that I'm so angry. Other than that, that's all I pretty much know about my birth.
Mhm. Well, there would be enough to go off, of course, Eva.
Yeah.
Would you
So,
say a rebirthing is needed here, or?
yeah, I think it would be. So when we decide if a rebirthing is needed or not, it would be based on the symptoms. If the client is having any of the list that you have mentioned before, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also, just when they say they were a cesarean section, we definitely do rebirthing because they haven't been birthed really yet. So
Normally, yeah.
cesarean section, always rebirthing indicated, always. If it's a natural birth, then it would be rebirthing would be indicated if it's an early or late or traumatic birth, right? Yeah.
So
Very good.
traumatic birth would be like something like Saida has mentioned, that her mom was pushed down the stairs. That would be considered as traumatic birth.
No, that was before birth, wasn't it?
So what would be a traumatic birth?
Birth is when the birth energies has been released. So we are in the birth process and it takes too long and the baby got trapped.
Okay.
They get stuck. They need the suction cup to get out. I just realized. Remember, I had recently a client with a suction cup situation where we did rebirthing, which was very intense.
Yes.
So that's indicated in this case. Yeah, definitely.
So do we do the rebirthing like through the family constellation, or is it a different technique?
I show you two different techniques. Yeah.
Okay. So you'll show us later. Okay.
Yep.
Just to confirm, this module it's separate from the teachings of Hellinger, right?
Yeah. But however, yes and no. Bert Hellinger has, of course, interrupted movement is Bert Hellinger, which we talk about. And Bert Hellinger has often said in his, so he never taught us the system of birth and death and all of this. But in his work, he was doing all of that in his own ways in the workshop setting. I have seen him doing all of this, rebirthing all the time. He was all the time holding the clients tight, and then said also he is 50% of the time in a family constellation, he's actually representing the mother. That's what he said. He ends up being the mother, and he had a lot of rebirthing through holding tight. He never called it rebirthing. Just it's not his terminology. It was all trauma. It was just trauma work, right? Trauma work.
But
so he did that all the time.
Yeah, it's also interesting that you have also mentioned the chakras, because I don't think this also was involved in the family constellation, right?
The what?
The chakras, because you have mentioned the heart chakra, and yesterday when you showed the the emotions and the colors and the chakras on the image. It has I don't think also Hellinger
No,
worked with
no.
the
He has
chakras.
not referred to colors. No. That's the work of
Okay.
Malcolm Southwood to work with the spiritual colors. Yeah.
So you believe in chakras, right? Because I also like working with chakras and these things.
I don't believe in chakras at all,
Mm,
but I don't work with chakras, but
mm,
I don't disbelieve it neither. And
mm,
I know that I work with the colors and the emotions and the frequencies, and I
mm,
know that it's very accurate.
mm,
And I do work with chakras if it's indicated. This is why I said, you don't need to believe in all of this. Nothing.
mm,
Just take it. Let's say, I don't know, I have to refer to my plumber's picture again. let's say the plumber who is fixing a pipe that is leaking, yeah, doesn't
mm,
need to believe in that the water is spiritual and flowing and endless and circle. Doesn't nothing. He just fixes this pipe so the client is happy that it's not leaking anymore, right? And that is, I find it in my work utmost important that you don't adopt a new belief system.
mm,
We want to shed, if anything, we want to shed belief system to be open to experience more and widen our horizon, right? We don't want to adopt a new one. That would be, then I would have failed you really if I would, require that of you. Very good. And the other way around, what was about Heba's birth, Suman?
yeah. Well, my mom always keeps reminding me because I was breached and I was supposed to be delivered by C-section, but her doctor was patient enough to give her the chance to deliver normally.
Wow,
So
are
she
you
keeps
lucky?
saying, "You have to push and you got stuck at the waist and they gave me an injection."
So how late were you?
um, in general, I'm usually
Oh, you are frozen. I think I lost
and
you
sit a
for a
little bit
second.
idle because I'm always moving around.
Say it again. I lost you for a second there.
In general, I'm always a fast mover. Like
Mhm.
I want to get things done, get done, get done, get
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
I had to learn how to sit a little bit idle.
So you must have had a slow birth then.
Yeah, it was long birth because I was breech. I came with my feet.
Yeah, see, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good, very good. I have the same.
And then she was like, I
My
saw the
mother.
white light when I was delivering you.
Yeah. I had exactly the same. My mother said also I was born twice somehow. I don't know. Came out, go back, came
Yeah.
out while she was in labor for I don't know how many hours, 24 or more. And she also said I was the fastest kid in the kindergarten. Very good. So, Sumin, your assessment was with Heba. Is there anything to do, or what is to do?
I would think not, since she was able to have a natural birth.
And you
No?
don't think that the slow birth is traumatic and requires
Oh,
birthing?
yes, that would be a traumatic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially coming out with her feet 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and interestingly, also the reason I came a couple of days earlier because my brother jumped on my mom's tummy when she was lying
Oh,
down. I was like, get out, and he jumped on her. He was so eager to get me out. You know, Saeed.
He wanted his
And funny
mother
thing
back.
that we were really like, my mom told me that when we were younger, we were like stuck together. People thought that we were twins because we're like
Ah,
everywhere together.
ah,
We were
very good.
glued together. He and I, yeah.
Very good. Well, very good. So that was our little exercise. Now I leave you. Yes, Saida, you go.
One question. It occurred to me listening to Suman and Hiba, that if you don't know anything about your birth, then actually what you can do is you can ask them just to talk, And then from the symptoms, that gives you information, doesn't
Mhm.
it?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and maybe that's the way to then kind of decide or
absolutely,
determine what to do.
absolutely. And I can assure you, it is always good to do rebirthing. I have had 2 with Malcolm Southwood in person and 1 in a group setting. So that was a bit weird, but anyhow. So let's call it 3, if you will. And yeah, and that's great. Like, it cannot harm. It always helps. Yeah. And in doubt, definitely rebirthing. And the good thing is also, if you have a client situation and you really don't know how to tackle him, her, if there's nothing you can really get your hands on, do a rebirthing. It definitely helps the client. Definitely helps the client before you waste the session.
Yeah.
Do a rebirthing.
And is this something that you can do virtually as well? Like, do you do
Yes, I
rebirthing
do
virtually?
that, but I would highly, as always, recommend you do it in person first.
Yeah.
Because you
Thank you.
really need to see this whole process, how the client is acting, reacting with the whole body to this. You will see when I demonstrate that, and once you have a few visuals of that, then you can talk them through so they can imagine that in their head. Yeah, because that's important. They need to imagine everything in their head. Yeah. Good. So now we have our 10 minutes. It's a quarter to, oh, it's almost 10 to 8. So let's say we meet at the full hour. Okay, see you soon. Okay, here comes the slides again. Nope, not coming up. Okay. Takes a while. Here we go. All right. Heba Navjoti. Oh, Suman. Suman is not with us. What happened to her? Well, okay. Let's talk about other problems that can cause an early childhood trauma that is related to the birth of the child. And a common one is the postpartum depression of the mother. The postpartum depression is a phenomenon that the mother is rejecting the baby after giving birth. And it happens more often that you would think to the woman, and the family is normally suffering under it really badly, and the mother often has a lot of guilt because of that, but she cannot help herself. She feels like after giving birth, she has no connection to the baby and she can't look after it. Yeah. There are mild forms of postpartum depression that the mother is still able to nurse the baby and take the baby, but she's emotionally not available. Yeah, and to the very severe one that the mother cannot see the baby, and the baby is raised for the first period in their life completely separate from the mother. What happened there in a postpartum depression? It sounds so anti-natural, right? Navjoti, your video's off, just to let you know. Are you here? What happens there? So one explanation is why this happened, that the giving birth to a child is releasing memories of being born. That's the trigger, remember? The trigger of a trauma. And the trauma would be the unreleased birth energies in the mother when she was born, or the trauma would be an interrupted movement towards her mother, maybe because her mother had postpartum depression, or there was something else happening. when she was born, that she could not reach out to her mother when she needed to. Maybe the mother fell ill or she fell ill or something has happened, that they were parted in a situation where the child was in need of the mother. The postpartum depression itself is definitely causing an interrupted movement towards the mother and the baby. And also the mild form of postpartum depression can cause that if just the mother is emotionally not available. I just recently had a case, actually, that was the case. The mother was able to look after the child, but emotionally not available to the child. What we do is to release this trauma, which is called a postpartum depression, we do a rebirthing or a family constellation or both combined, of course. Right? So we do a rebirthing with the mother, not the child, because the child has been birthed. The postpartum depression is most often a trigger, and it's not coming out of the blue. So just to treat, like in classical, if you will, a therapy, just to treat the postpartum depression in the mother with medication or whatnot, that would not help, especially not future, neither the baby, not future generation. We have to find the source of it. It doesn't come out of the blue. There must be a reason for it. Okay, now we are looking how we do our rebirthing, actually. So the way that I use it, and I have learned it from Malcolm Southwood, is what I'm conveying here. A rebirthing can happen spontaneously in a family constellation. That was what Bert Hellinger was doing, and he was doing the same steps, but he skipped the setup and the preparation. You know, he jumped right into it, into the main part. So the setup and preparation is that you make sure that your client, that you have a room where the client can lay down on the floor. And if that's a hard floor, you would put pillows and blankets there. So that's one thing. You make sure that when the client is falling, they cannot hurt themselves. And you cannot hurt yourself, neither. You have to make sure that this is a safe space. If neither the client nor you can fall and bump the head at a table or at a shelf or something like that. So there needs to be this space where they can do that. Then you guide your client in alpha state. You guide your client in alpha state like we do it exactly. We do it in regression, which we will do later, and that you might have observed me doing in a workshop or in a practice workshop. And we will definitely also do a regression session tomorrow, so where you can see how I guide my client into an alpha state. Yeah. After the client is in alpha state, you guide the client back into the time of the womb, when the client was in the womb of the mother. And you guide your client back to that moment when it was the right time to be born, when they were ready, baby and mother. So we are not replaying the traumatic birth, obviously. So we are suggesting that we are now in a normal birth scenario. Therefore, you need to know how a normal birth is set up, so you can suggest that to the client. It's a guided meditation, this rebirthing, so they find themselves in the womb of the mother when it was ready. The baby and the mother and the birth energies have started to form, and the birth has started. So you will suggest that. You will suggest that to the client, that the water broke, that the space ran out, that he's completely filling out the womb, that the head is down, that the head is pressing against the cervix of the mother, and this is starting to opening. So you have to suggest that to your client. If you have never witnessed a birth or you had no birth for yourself, then it's recommended you watch YouTube videos and get yourself educated how that looks like, so you can suggest that to your client, how a normal birth takes place. And that will be around week 40, but you don't need to say that. You just say you are ready. Your mother is ready. Okay. Hang on, I just have something in the chat. Is that yeah, Navjyoti is coming back. She has to switch something. But I haven't heard from Suman, so I don't know what happened to her. Maybe she fell asleep in the break. So,
she was having a bit of a connection problem earlier.
oh, had she? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you guide the client through the whole birth process, and you make it really vivid and very precise. So you suggest to the client that he feels how the walls coming closer, that is the contraction, how they come and go, how it becomes too tight. There's the whole room for the client to stay there. So like as detailed as possible. Take your time. Don't skip any steps. Yeah. And therefore you really need to know how a birth takes place normally, and watch the videos that you can get hold of, or read books, or talk to mothers about it. Again, make sure they cannot harm themselves, because the next step would be, I forgot to tell you that in person you are standing behind your client. Yeah. You're standing behind your client and you have the arms around the shoulders. So the arms are inside. So the arms from the client are next to the body and your arms are around the shoulders and the arms. Yeah, and you stand behind the client and you are kind of holding onto your hands, and you really, as more as you guide them to the beginning of the birth process, as tighter your grip goes. That's important. This is triggering the memory of the birth, of the subconscious. Yeah, that's important. And that's what Bert Hellinger also did, that he was, because he was trained in Irina Prevkov holding therapy. He didn't name it rebirthing, but that's exactly what he did. He holds the client so tight, and what will happen then is they will fall forward with their head. That is basically the head starts to go through the birth canal channel. And when the client falls forward, you have to hold him, hold your grip, and go down with him at the same time. Yeah. And you need to practice it. Please practice that with a friend who is light, not heavy. Yeah, really, it makes a big difference, I tell you. Yeah, choose a family member or a friend who is light, lightweight, because it makes it much, much easier. And definitely not a tall, big man. Yeah, because you really need to practice that. How you hold them, how you hold yourself, how your feet are standing, that you're stable and you can hold them while they fall forward. And then you can still hold them and go down slowly with them on the blankets while you still hold them. You can't let go. That's important. Don't let go. Yeah. The grip needs to be tight, and even tighter than you think. So tight that there's an instinct, and that's forming the birth energies to get out. Yeah. And the subconscious will work beautifully with you when you give the right environment for it. So the client falls forward over, you hold him tight, you hold your grip tight, you tighten your grip as much as you can, and then he will literally slip through your arms. That's the way, but it needs to be a struggle, so it cannot be quick. It needs to be a struggle, and you have, because once the shoulders are through, the body is normally lesser circumference, so you have to also adjust your grip. So your arms are getting tighter, closer together. So you are, even when you're at the hips and the legs, you still apply the same force on the body. Yeah, that's important. And you hold it there until the feet come out. Also the feet, and you can use your hands for that, needs to be pressed. At any stage of this, the body needs to be pressed. Yeah, that's important. And once the whole body went through your arms, that's when the birth has been taking place. Now we have to mimic, so to speak, the nursing of the mother. So of course we are not nursing him with a bottle or anything like this, but we take the client's head on the lap and let him crawl together into a fetal position and cover a blanket over them because they need to be really warm. Yeah. And then you would just have the head in your lap and you would praise the client. You would praise the client. You would say, good boy or good girl, you did a great job. Everything went well. Everything went well. You are healthy. I'm healthy. We are both healthy. Regardless how their real birth was, we are overriding the traumatic birth with the story of the normal birth. And the subconscious mind, like as same as the morphogenetic field, will be able to transcript the data into the new data. Yeah. So that's what you do. And when the client is screaming or breathing loudly or coughing or whatever, that's all good. That's exactly what he should do. Yeah. That's all part of it. So don't be afraid of that. Yeah. And then you said, now I'm finally have you with my baby. And remember, you are the mother. You are speaking in past tense and you are the mother. So you speak to your baby directly. Yeah. If you're uncomfortable with keeping the head of the client in your lap, then you can let your client hold a big cushion, yeah, which is then the lap of the mother. But you keep praising and do exactly that. Do exactly that what you would do when you had him on your lap. And that will take time, and you will feel that with your client, or with the person you're practicing, you will feel that once they become calm and tired, like a baby that wants to sleep after all this exhaustion. And then that would be then the closing. That would be the closing when you are guide them out of alpha state into the here and now. Yeah. So that's basically it. That's the rebirthing session. And it will take about 45 to 1 hour when you begin with in person. Yeah, to prepare for that, and definitely practice that with friends and families. It's amazing, and it's also quite joyful to do. So it's a good practice also for yourself. All right, now I'm concerned about Navjyoti's camera. Navjyoti, are you even here? Can you say something? No, we lost her as well. So let's talk about the interrupted movement towards the mother. So what it is, when it occurs, the signs of it, and of course, what we do, and of course, what is about the father. We also have to talk about that. So first start with the definition. Every child is drawn towards their mother in search of nourishment, care, love, and protection. That's an instinct. Yeah. Without these instinctive energies, the child wouldn't be able to secure its life. Completely driven by the subconscious. And it is only towards the natural mother. It is this bond with the mother in the womb where this is where the child perceives to get its nourishment, care, love, and protection from. Not from an even so caring nurse or nanny or grandmother or adoptive mother. That doesn't count. These movement is towards the mother that is the biological mother. Yeah. Don't ask me about surrogate mothers now at this point. Yeah, I'd love to work with the surrogate mother one day. I have never had one on a workshop or in a one-on-one session yet. A child that had a surrogate mother. I really need to see it to know how that works in an interrupted movement. Yeah. So that is the basic definition of the of the movement towards the mother. That is an instinct movement towards the mother. However, if the child is separated from its mother within the crucial first years of its life, and sometimes even in the womb, this forward movement comes to an abrupt halt. And it is not if somebody's guilty and did something, it's completely unrelated to that. The mother can fall ill, the child can fall ill, they can be hospitalized. There are many, many reasons why the child, even briefly, is taken away from the mother in a hospital. I told you that before. Often they've been taken away to be washed or weighed and vaccinated or whatnot. Lots of things before the mother even sees them. And that's already an interruption. Yeah, the birth has not even been finished, and that's this the case. Now, what happens is that the child is traumatized because it's afraid of dying, right? It thinks it doesn't get the nourishment, care, and protection and love that it needs to survive. Yeah, and it loses the trust in the mother to be able to protect it for this trauma. Yeah, so it's shut down, or the heart is closing, if you will. Yeah. But the energy is still there, moving towards the mother. It is the energy, like the birth energy, it's a specific energy, this movement towards the mother that is not going anywhere, that is created and it will be staying. Yeah. And therefore the child wants to go to the mother, but it's always something stopping it to do. That's the subconscious mind avoiding pain, remember? Stops. So that is what we see in a family constellation. That's the typical sign, and that brings us right to the sign that a child has an interrupted, like the representative of somebody has an interrupted movement towards the mother from childhood, is they are dismissive of the mother. The representative is showing signs, what I call the arrogant child. They think they are better than the mother. They are dismissive of the angry towards the mother, or frustrated or something. They don't want to go to the mother, but they cannot let go of her neither. They're looking at her. That's important, because there are other signs. If somebody is dismissing to another person, they can have many, many signs. But when they at the same time drawn, they want to look and they say, I want her to come to me. They don't want to go to her. They want her to come. That's a typical sign for an interrupted movement towards the mother. So when does it occur? It could be accidents or illness of the child or the mother, whatever reason it is that they are parted. Child or mother in hospital. The mother dies during birth, is of course causing immediately an interrupted movement towards the mother. The mother leaves the family, maybe dramatically has to leave the baby behind. These interrupted movements can happen maybe until year 5 of the child. You really never know, whenever the child still is in need of the mother, right? Of the mother and nobody else. That's pretty much when it occurs. It gets less and less severe over the time, and I would say it stops somewhere around year 7, when the child has reasoning and an ego and expression and has kind of started to develop their own life, if you will. But before year 4, definitely, if something occurs that is interrupting them in their movement, that would cause a trauma up to year 7, I would say. Saida, yeah?
And if the child is forcibly separated from the mother, that still occurs, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. The mother can also be forced to go away for work, either all day or for a few weeks or whatnot, especially in poor areas where the mother cannot stay at home. And the child is basically left with older siblings or somebody else from the household. So that is another reason why this can occur. Yeah. Think of the postpartum depression, when the mother is unable to look after this child, either emotionally or physically. Definitely causes an interrupted movement towards the mother. It happens to the young children who cannot express themselves and they feel helpless. So it's pretty much from the conception to about 4 years, most severely. It is the rejection of the child, right? Postpartum depression. But what is an interrupted movement not is when the client complains about the mother, what she did or didn't do, and what she wasn't enough or she wasn't good enough, and so on. All these talkings can hint at an interrupted movement, but does not necessarily is a sign for it. A sign you will see when you put up a representative for the child and a representative for the mother, and then you observe the interaction of the representative. That's the only way to find out if there's an interrupted movement or not. Yeah. So whatever the client says is not the hint. Of course, it would force us or guide us, I should say, into choosing a representative for the mother and for the child to see if it's an interrupted movement, but be prepared that it might not. So that is not a sign. That is just for us a reason or good enough reason to choose the said representative. The real signs are hyperactive children. They cannot get their energy from their mother due to an interrupted movement, and therefore they are like, what is this term? ADHL or something?
ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Hi enough, Jyoti, you're there. Is your camera still not going? Here she goes. Say it again. Say it again.
ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
ADHD. Thank you. Yeah, that is typical for an interrupted movement towards the mother, right? And we have many children like this. And of course, we have also many traumas in early childhood where they are parted from their mother. That's in line. The disregard of the mother is a sign of an interrupted movement. The talking negatively about the mother is a sign, but has to be proven in the constellation. So that's only a hint, if you will. Yeah. And important is that at the same time, they can't let go of the mother neither. That's important. It's always both. They are twist and torn. They want the mother, they look at the mother, they want the mother to come to them, but they don't want to go to them. Now, in an interrupted movement, it is required that in order to heal this trauma, that the child can finish the movement it had towards the mother that has been interrupted. So it does not help at all if the mother comes to the child. It will not heal the trauma. Yeah. So therefore, the mother needs to stay where they are, the representative of the mother. That's paramount. Needs to stay there, and the child needs to overcome the trauma and makes its way towards the mother. That's the only healing movement. Yeah, there. So in the family constellation, that looks like exactly what I just said. They don't want to go close to the mother. They may do a step or two, but they don't want to go all the way to the mother, and they want the mother to come to them. That's the most common sign of an interrupted movement. Enough, Jyoti?
Maya, sometimes what if the mother in the constellation says, I want to go and hug my child?
Yes, I want to do that all the time. And then you have to say, stop, stay where you are. But what the mother can always say, they can always say yes to the child. They can say, I love you, I'm here for you. They can open the arms, they can have some gestures, but they cannot move. Yeah? And if you have a representative who's rushing towards the child, you have to bring them back where they were. Because we want to give the child the opportunity, or the client, the opportunity to heal this trauma by moving towards the mother. They have always anger towards the mother, right? There's always an anger towards the mother. If there's no anger towards the mother, it's probably not an interrupted movement towards the mother. Anger can also be disguised as sadness or sometimes desire, but the anger, it normally comes out in a family constellation through the representative, quite obvious and quite early. A sign of an interrupted movement towards the mother is, surprise, surprise, the client cannot stay in a relationship. Clients who are struggling to stay in long-lasting relationships most likely have an interrupted movement towards their mother. So what are we doing? Of course, we do a family constellation. And we do that in a workshop setting in a way that we have two representatives, mother and child, facing each other. And we ask the child to say please to the mother. Please, remember, please is a healing word. Please is I need you. I need your love. This acknowledging that they need the mother, and their dismissal is not allowing them to take in the nourishment of the mother. When they cannot say please, they have to go down on their knee or maybe even lying down. As smaller the representative of the child gets, as easier it is to say please. And you see that over and over and over again in family constellation. That's always like this. The mother is not moving, even though if she's desperate to help the child. It is not helping the child if she does anything else other smiling and being open. The child says, please, mom, as often as necessary until the representative can move closer to the mother, crawling on the knees, crawling on the belly, whatever is necessary, but the client's representative must do the way, all the way. That's the healing movement, nothing else heals. Finally, and we apply the other words that comes with please. For example, please, I need your nourishment. Please, I need your care. And when they cannot even say that, then you start at the beginning, acknowledging what is. My life came through you. You came first. Then I came. I was after you, right? I am the little one. You are the big one. All these truths needs to be said as a preparation for the real movement that is with the please, I need you. I need your love. This acknowledgement is then the igniting the real movement. And going back, and then imagine that the representative of the child is still on the knees, on the belly, and is crawling forward. The first hug is then the knees or the legs of the representative of the mother. Don't rush them into getting up too early. Yeah, these movements are slow, and once they can touch the feet of the mother or the legs, that is the moment when the heart is opening, and you give it time. And then the heart is opening, and now the love that is already there from the mother and from their mothers before can finally flow into the heart of the child that was closed due to the trauma. It is never the reason of an interrupted movement is not that the mother isn't able to give love, because the love is not created by the mother. It's not her love. It's the universal love of mothers that is flowing through her. She is a conduit for the love. She cannot hold it back. Even if she wanted to, she cannot hold it back. An interrupted movement is always that the child has closed its heart and cannot receive it. Right? So remember that, and when you remember that it's always about the closed heart of the child that makes it impossible to receive the love of the mother, then you know automatically that all the steps are needed, that the client's representative is opening the heart. And also, I would like very much that the client is doing this for themselves as an interrupted movement, not with a representative. So this would be once the representative has managed to move towards the mother, that would be latest the moment where I would swap the client with the representative, so they can actually keep the heart open and breathe in the love of the mother. Yeah. Of course, if he doesn't want to, then not. That's fine. But if they can, then that's preferable. So they can then, of course, get up and get a proper hug from their mother. Remember that the mother's arms need to be over the shoulders of the representative of the child, even if the representative of the child is 6'5" or something, then they need to make themselves smaller. That's just a sign of this, the orders of love, the first order of love, who comes first. So this is how the mother hugs the child, right? In her arms, not the child have the mother in their arms. That's important. So when you do the interrupted movement towards the mother remotely in a one-on-one session, after you have done that in person, that's as always very important. You've done that several times in person, so you know exactly how it works. And not one is the same as the other, so you need 10, 20 interrupted movements until you just see the similarities, yeah, and know how to prepare then for some interrupted movement that is by representatives that you might have, that has variations that you haven't seen yet. So you need to gather a little bit of experience there. However, when you feel experienced enough, you do it remotely in a one-on-one session by visualizing all of the steps. So all of the steps are visualizing. It's practically a regression into childhood, if you will, in alpha state, yeah, to the moment when the interruption took place, yeah. And then we go through exactly the same steps. The client faces the mother and says, please, go through all this. I'm the small one, you are the big one. All this, all the words, all the sentences that help the client to visualize that they can go towards their mother, yeah. And once they are able to go towards their mother, they hug a pillow. Yeah, because they're on their own, there's nobody they can hug, so they hug a pillow. And then you would suggest to the client to keep the heart open to receive all the love that is flowing in this moment into his heart. Yeah, from the mother and from the mothers before them. It's always coming all the way from the source of love. So let's go to the what if, the troubleshooting part. What if the mother cannot face or look at the child, so obviously is not willing to let the love flow towards the child? What are we doing then? What do you think?
Maya, sorry, I'm just asking a question about what you just said. So in a one-on-one, when it's face-to-face, I'm guessing that you are representing the mother, the facilitator is
No, you
representing.
don't.
Okay.
You are. Thank you. That's a good question. You are you let your client with closed eyes visualize his mother and him. Yeah. And it's a regression, so you guide your client to the point of the trauma. So they are at that age. If it was in the womb of the mother, they are swimming in the womb of the mother. If it was after birth, then they are right there after birth. Yeah, and they're visualizing the mother.
So after, let's say after the regression, it goes into a constellation with the mother in a one-to-one.
Yeah.
Then does the facilitator represent the mother, or are they
No,
still
at no
visualizing?
point. No,
Point?
no, at no point.
So
So always, we will actually do one, I think. We will definitely do one either today or tomorrow. It depends on when we have the time for that. So you will see it. So you just have to visualize what you would see in a family constellation. Yeah. And you would suggest to your client, like a facilitator, you're always a facilitator in this case. Yeah. You are only the mother in rebirthing. When you are physically doing a physical rebirthing with your client in person, that's when you are the mother. But in no other circumstances, you are always a facilitator. So you either have representatives for mother and client, or your client is visualizing both mother and himself.
So Maya, before I met you, I had been to other facilitators for a one-to-one, and I saw that they took on as many roles as possible. So, if I'm in a constellation, they would become the mother, or they would become whoever else was coming up, and they would play multiple roles, and they would speak that, okay, this is what is coming through about your mother. Your mother says this, or this is what is coming through about blah blah blah. So they were channeling the mother. So yeah, and yeah, you're right. In terms of movements, they were only asking to visualize. They never asked to be hugged or to be held or whatever, or to. So
I find that quite confusing. I would not recommend that.
Okay.
I would not recommend that. You are a facilitator and you stay a facilitator. To jump into roles and then become the facilitator and jump into another role and to become, I cannot even, it never occurred to me that that would be the right way. It might work for them. It might work for them. I have no experience with that. I have never seen that, but I would not recommend you do that.
So because sometimes, let's say in a group, people express things. So this facilitator was expressing things. So then the facilitator is not expressing what the mother wants to say.
The client is representing everybody.
The client.
The client is representing everybody. In my work, the client is representing everybody. Yeah. So that is when I work with figurines, for example, we have like 4 figurines there. Let's say mother, father, child, and grandmother. Yeah, I would ask the client to connect with each of the figurines one after the other and feel what they feel.
Oh, so is the client then?
I do pick up on things. I do pick up on things here and there, yeah. But I would only express that if the client needs help. I want the client to represent them, because then I am objective and I can observe and I can stay the facilitator. Yeah? In the moment I'm resonating with a specific family member, I cannot observe anymore. Yeah. And that's not my role. I have heard of others, they do online sessions and they ask a third party into the Zoom call. I have heard of that. So they have kind of regular representatives who are ready. So they come as a third party into the Zoom call and they are representing everybody. I have heard of that. I have never done it though. But that the facilitator is jumping between roles and facilitating, I don't think I'm a fan of that. Yeah. Okay, so where are we? The mother cannot look, the what ifs. So the mother cannot face or look at the child. What is that? What do you think? What do we do here? What sign is that for what?
She has an interrupted movement towards her own mother.
Yeah, right, exactly. So what are we doing here?
So we bring her mother.
Yes, we bring her mother in. And we might even see that her mother can also not look at her child. And then we bring her mother in, and so on, up to 7 generations. We put the mothers of the mothers there, one after the other, until we have found the one mother who looks at their child. And when we have found this mother who looks at their child with love, we know that is the first interrupted movement in this child. And we start there with exactly the steps we were discussing, nothing unusual there. We are performing this full interrupted movement towards the mother in this generation. And then when this interrupted movement has come to has been overcome, and there was a uniting between the child and the mother, then we turn the child around, the representative of the child, and now it's a complete different facial expression. Now they would look, guaranteed, they would look at their child with love, where there was dismissal before. That's as easy as that. You just need time and patience, because if you have that 7 times, and you can't skip a step, so you always, and everybody has an interrupted movement, so everybody needs time to go to their mother, right? But it's very rewarding, because at the end, all the way to the first child, all the mothers will be smiling and looking at the child and emanate so much love for the child that is quite beautiful.
Maya, if you don't have enough people gathered for the constellation.
So in an in-person constellation, you can ask them to swap roles. Yeah. So you just, it's like, what is this? There's a game where you kind of, the chairs also, you put the one chair always to the other. So if you have only 4 people, then you would always ask the ones you're not working with to represent the next generation, right? And when you're visualizing, there's no problem. You can visualize as many people as you want. And when you use figurines or other objects, you can use all kinds of objects to represent them all. Yeah. So there's always a workaround. So that's what I just have explained. So you choose for every mother a representative and see where did the interruption start. Which generation was it? If it doesn't work like this, then there is an alternative, which is actually quite rare, but it can happen, that you look for an entanglement in the family of the mother. That the mother or the grandmother or whoever has not an interrupted movement towards their mother, but they are entangled in one of the 3 dynamics with another family member. And that makes her unable to look after the child. That's possible. Yeah. So if you come to a point where you can't figure out where the interrupted movement has actually started, then just look somewhere else, look for another entanglement. That's maybe the cause for this inability of the mother to connect with the child. Or the inability of the child to connect with the mother. And how do we know that? You just don't find the same symptoms, the same sign. So when the child is looking at the mother, but is angry of the mother and wants the mother to come and doesn't want to go, that's an interrupted movement. If the child is angry at the mother, but doesn't look at her, for example, looks at somebody else, looks away, maybe to another representative, maybe into the void where nobody is yet, which is more often, that's not an interrupted movement. Yeah. They look at the mother in an interrupted movement. They don't look away. So if they look away, they are entangled with somebody who's angry at the mother. Yeah. So we are still doing the work of a detective here. We have to find out what's the real cause and the real source of this behavior, of this trauma. The other possibility is that the mother might have to release trapped birth energies from her birth to be able to look at the child with love. Yeah. But that will, there will be signs for that, so you would know how that would look once it comes to it. What is if the child is not willing to move towards the mother, regardless what you do? Like, absolutely no way. Two options. The child is looking towards the mother. It's definitely an interrupted movement, but it's not moving. Yeah, you have to break it up, and you have to trust the field that something has started. At least the acknowledging that there is an interrupted movement towards the mother, and that the movement will continue for the client outside of the constellation, and comes to wherever a natural household is, and they will come back. They can continue. This is not a one time off situation. These interrupted movements can be repeated. Yeah, even if in a constellation this movement comes to an end, if the same client comes a year later to a family constellation, it's very possible that you have again the situation there and you do it again. That is possible. That is absolutely no question. This is why it's also good, and I do like that sometimes in person workshops, when I have time for that, to make a mother exercise. That one group are mothers, that I work with the whole workshop. The one group are the mothers, and the other group are the children. They are facing each other in pairs, so that everyone can go through an interrupted movement towards the mother, because it's so common. And then everyone can do the steps, and then we swap roles, and then the other group is a child, and the other group is the mother, and they can go and do the steps. Yeah, because it's so basic, and it's most likely that everybody needs it anyhow. So what is so what else? So try, of course, we try all the generations first, yeah. But if it's not work, and then in worst case, before we give up and break it up, we ask the client to lie down, arms out, and face on the floor, with the palms of hands facing up in front of the mother, and just breathe there. Yeah, just breathe there. Just stay there and breathe. That would be, even if they don't move after that, this alone, this acknowledging for that the mother comes first in their gesture, is already enough in this instance. Enough of a first movement to overcome the trauma. Always let them say, please, mom. They can't say it often enough. Just by saying, please, mom, maybe in their mother tongue, maybe you swap to the mother tongue when in English doesn't work, yeah? And something will happen. You can trust that. You can also suggest a rebirthing, yeah? Because they probably have too much trapped birth energies, and that's why they can't go towards the mother. Possible, yeah? And if the child is a boy, like the client is a man, they might be entangled with the father who is angry towards his wife. Yeah, don't forget that. There's always a possibility of an entanglement. So you can try a constellation rather me than you. So but this is, you don't need to worry about that. That will all come with time. That will reveal itself. You won't be concerned with that when you start practicing. Yeah. When you start practicing, you will have the easy cases. The morphic field will not throw anything at you that is too complicated or overwhelming. You just follow the easy steps of an interrupted movement, and you will see it will all move nicely. Yeah. And as always, if nothing works, you break up. That's enough for the client at that stage. There's always a reason why nothing works. So trust that. Yeah. So for the father, it's exactly the same. Yeah.
You said entangled with the father who is angry with his wife. So by wife you mean who's angry with the mother of the boy, because who may or may not be the wife, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the mother. Sorry, yeah, not the wife. Yeah, you're right. That is very precise. So the mother. Yeah, exactly. Correct. So the father, same. There can be an interrupted movement towards the father. It's exactly the same procedure. It's not as often as the interrupted movement towards the mother, but it does definitely happen. You would suggest to say, instead of "I need your nourishment and care," "I need your love," of course. "I need your protection as well." But then you would probably say, "I need you to secure my life. I need you to give me stability." That are more the attributes contributed to the male part of the family that would have a stronger impact than nourishment and care. And of course, because they are not instinct energies built up towards in the father towards the child, there is not the alternative of a rebirthing or anything like this. It is a simple interrupted movement towards the father. Or alternatively, an entanglement that can happen. But then you would have a third person. If you have only two, if two is enough, then it's an interrupted movement. If two are not enough, then you add the third person and see if there's an entanglement. So here is a 15-minute video about an interrupted movement. We are already at the end of our time. So what I'm going to do is I let that play on the video so you can watch it on the video, okay? Yeah?
Just one question.
Yep.
You haven't mentioned anything about breastfeeding.
Yeah, did I not?
No. So you said that the birth should not be interrupted from the moment the baby comes out until the colostrum is produced.
Yeah.
So now we see a lot of women, their bodies don't make the milk and they end up feeding with the bottle. So this would be considered as interrupted movement, right?
I'm not sure about that. I cannot say yes or no. I have not seen a case where only because they couldn't feed is forming an interrupted movement.
Okay. So
if they are emotionally and physically available, if they're available, if they prepare the milk, if they give the milk in the bottle, is the child traumatized? I don't think so.
I suspect.
I don't know, but medically, it's pretty much known that, of course, a child who is breastfed, their connection with the mother and their health is much better than bottle fed.
Definitely, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But does that show up in a constellation ever? That because a child was not breastfed, that there is an interruption?
I don't know. I'm speaking medically. That's why I'm asking her if it's also looked at.
I don't think I've ever seen that. Just because if that would be the only thing, the only thing. Just remember, there is a reason why a mother cannot or will not give her breast to the child. There must be a reason for that, right? And it's not as easy as, well, she cannot produce milk.
You also said the same thing about the C-section, right? These things are becoming really a lot, common a lot. I don't know, they keep saying because of the diet, because of their lifestyle, you know. So what if the mother is a working mother and then after the maternity leave, some countries like here in the UAE, they get only 40 days maternity leave. They don't get like 3 months, 6 months like in UK and other countries. And after 40 days, she goes back to work. So she's leaving the child only like 8 hours a day when she's out for work. Would that also be considered like interrupted movement, or will it affect the baby?
I would say so, yeah. I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. This is something that is common nowadays. This is why you need to do that all the time with your clients, with yourself, repeat it. It's just common. Yeah, but so just the breastfeeding, just coming back to that, just the substitute of breast milk to bottle milk, I cannot see why this is causing a trauma. But why a mother cannot breastfeed, yeah, and doesn't go through the pain and everything else that is entailed with breastfeeding the child, there is a reason for that. and it is most likely that that is an own trauma she has. Yeah. So there might a combination with the mother not being emotionally available for the child. That would definitely cause it. Yeah. So the good thing is about all this is we don't need to theorize about it. You see it in the signs. You see it in the constellation if there is an interrupted movement or not. Yeah. And you don't need to ask yourself, is it because they haven't been breastfed, or is it because the mother went to work? For this line of work, we do not need to know the reason. We do not need to go back there. The movement itself is healing in the family constellation, regardless what has caused it. Yeah. Okay.
But you said that the child should be cared by the mother until the child is 4 years, I think.
40 days is when they shouldn't be separated. Yeah. That is kind of the hallmark for a healthy bond between the child and the mother. And after that, of course, that is loosening over time. So
after that, if he's getting help to take care of the baby, it's
I think the
traumatic.
first 40 days are really paramount. I think that's actually setting the tone for the relationship between the mother and the child. If you would have to advise somebody now, if you would be a nurse or a midwife, or you have a daughter-in-law who's pregnant, or your daughter's pregnant, and they ask for advice, that's what I would say. I would say, make sure you are not separated from your child from the moment of birth until they're 40.
Yeah, this is interesting because a lot of people, even if the baby is still small, they keep them in a separate room.
Yeah. Oh, horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think
I don't know. They keep saying that this is healthier for the child. They should.
I think they only want to sleep. I think they are very selfish. I think they only want to stay asleep. Or the husbands want their wives back, which is also very selfish.
No, I mean, even like professionals, they keep saying the same thing. Like, but not, of course, after 40 days. I think maybe at the age of a year or two, when the baby stop breastfeeding.
Oh well,
if she's
okay, that's. I was thinking of the first 40 days. I was thinking of, Saida.
But I think a lot of what you're talking about is the cultural context you live in. So, for example, I have to admit, like, I put my kids into their own room when they were about a month old, because that's what happens in society.
Yeah.
And yet, if my kids were born in Pakistan, I would not have been allowed to be away from them for 40 days or even leave the house or anything like that. And so there is something about the culture and the society that we're in that is advocating a very early separation and going back to work, and this idea that mothers shouldn't be affected from having kids and all of that.
Agree. And they call it emancipation.
Yeah,
I know. That's correct. But that's not bad news. The good news is you can heal everything. Yeah, with very simple steps. And that's what we do. And that is very joyful. So we don't need to worry about what the cultures are doing or not doing. We just say, okay, it is what it is. And now is the time to fix it. Okay.
And thank you for doing the work you're doing, Maya, because I think you're giving us the skills and the knowledge to be able to do this. Otherwise, we can just say what we want to say, but not know how to fix it,
That's true. And it's my great joy to pass it on, because I'm so thankful to have learned that from Bert Hellinger and Malcolm Southwood mainly. And I'm so grateful, and it makes me very joyful that I can pass it on. Wonderful. Okay, so as I said, I will play this video in the recording. So you see it when you see the video recordings, and you will have ample opportunities to see me in workshops facilitating an interrupted movement. It happens like all the time. So there's no, and now that you know everything about it, now you see more precisely what's going on there, and then you can also more learn from it than before when you were tapping in the dark. So like a little bit like this.
Maya, just one last clarification. You said the sign of interrupted movement towards the mother is that they can't stay in a relationship. So that means they're always left on their own, but conflict in a relationship can be anything else.
So they can't stay in a healthy relationship. So
okay.
so they either have never have a partner, that they never marry. That's a sign. They never find the right partner, or they never have fulfilling partnerships. They never felt really at the right place in their partnership. A definite sign is if they never had a relationship. That's a sign for interrupted movement towards the mother. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So, but a couple that keeps fighting is not necessarily due to interrupted movement towards
Can
mother.
be. Yeah, can be. Maybe both have an interrupted movement towards the mother. Yeah, that's absolutely possible. Yeah, because an interrupted movement towards the mother is also a dismissal of the mother, but can't let go of the mother neither. So a relationship where the partners stay in, but they cannot really reach each other, that kind of looks a little bit like an interrupted movement that both have towards their mothers. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So I see you tomorrow, same time, same place, and I wish you a lovely night, day, and see you then. Bye.